Thank you all, first of all, for being here today. I know we've had a very packed conference over the last couple of days. We have talked about a lot of the various aspects of the quantum industry. And to me, there have really been three key themes that I have seen emerge. One is really that we are in the process of entering a new phase of quantum technologies where we are moving from the R&D phase into more towards commercialization. The second theme builds off that, which is really as these technologies mature and reach more commercial applicability, we are seeing a heightened awareness of the risks these technologies potentially pose to information security. And then the third theme that I really have picked up on repeatedly throughout this conference is that notion of we can't solve this alone, and we have to work together across nations, but also even within our organizations. And I think that for me personally, as a cybersecurity policy professional, a lot of this last point in particular really resonates because we have been figuring out and trying to put a lot of work in the cybersecurity community to try and understand how we can communicate risks in a more understandable manner to policymakers and also to key decision makers within companies. I'm very pleased today, thank you for the introduction earlier already, but I'm very pleased today to be joined by three of those leaders from the industry side. We have representatives from IBM, Accenture, and Google. Kate represents Google Quantum AI, where she works across a number of different teams to really advance Google Quantum AI's mission and also the external reception. Those teams include not only the PQC team, but also the algorithm and algorithmic research teams. Carl works at Accenture, where he is a leader in helping companies really go through the migration, go through the hard work of integrating post-quantum cryptography into their systems and understanding, going through the process of inventorying and then migrating. So very excited to have you here and hear from the front lines. And then Charles, you worked for IBM Worldwide Quantum Safe. So I'd like to actually start with you and just ask you to give us an opportunity and just take a moment to level set our expectations. What do we even mean by quantum safety? What do we mean when we talk about quantum safety? And how does it fit into IBM's overall business schedule?
Thank you. So what is quantum safety? So we defined at IBM that our main goal is to build a quantum computer that is useful. And because with every technology, there is always risk associated with new technology. And so we define quantum safety or quantum safe as being able to mitigate or protect against one of the risks that comes from quantum computing. And for those who are in the audience, I'm sure you guys have been looking at this for some time, that Peter Shor in 1994 created Shor's algorithm, and it was determined and postulated then that we could crack public key cryptography. And because of that, IBM's been on a journey to develop capabilities for cryptographic posture management, for risk management, and we have also developed the cryptographic algorithms that have just been recently standardized by NIST to protect existing IT environments from the potential risk of a cryptographically relevant quantum computer. And so for me, quantum safe means being able to use the NIST post-quantum cryptography algorithms on existing IT systems to protect against the eventual cryptographically relevant quantum computer.
Thank you. And Carl, maybe we can move over to you. So as I shared at the onset, you actually are out there helping organizations with their migration. Two questions for you. First question, do organizations get it? And then maybe the second follow-up to that is, how do we do a better job of telling that story for how this is not just like a technology risk, but a business risk?
Yeah, I think that a lot of organizations are coming to terms with it now, but not necessarily understanding the actions that they need to take in order to address the risk. This risk is dissimilar in certain ways to any other risks that is faced by cybersecurity organizations, in a sense that there are two risks that are happening simultaneously. The first is, and this manifests itself in the algorithms that NIST has approved for use in order to protect against the risk. The first is the capture of information that we're exchanging today that's using public key cryptography could be decrypted later in the future. And so protecting this information that we're using today for our communications from that eventuality is one. The second is, when that cryptographically relevant quantum computer exists, any device or individual on the internet using asymmetric cryptography as an identity can be broken. And so that means a collapse of our internet confidentiality and infrastructure in a way that has not been realized or materialized in the past before. So getting an understanding of those two risks, what they mean to you and how to protect against them, is a challenge for any business to really wrap their heads around and understand.
Yeah, thank you. And so what kind of solutions maybe do you offer at Accenture to help your clients make that migration?
Yeah, so that's the great part, is the solutions are the NIST algorithms. They have been certified by the experts of the world. The competition has gone on for the last decade to show us a pathway to replacing the existing cryptography with new cryptography. The challenge then becomes, what is a strategy to do that? What level of infrastructure do you add these new algorithms to, at your network level, at your library level, at your application level, or or do you do encapsulation of different applications in order to protect them? Those are considerations you have to make decisions about, but you can't make those decisions unless you know where the cryptography is being used in your environment. So you have to do inventory scanning and understanding and detection of where all of that is, and then architect a solution, and then make decisions about it and implement it. And this is a long process because people don't normally collect this. They're not normally monitoring this. It just comes, cryptography comes with an application inherently, and we all expect it, but we don't really necessarily take the time to embrace how to change it or adopt it when something like this happens.
Yeah, thank you. And I know we spent a lot of time over lunch, talking where exactly that falls, and the various definitions of crypto agility that are out there. So certainly we can revisit this point, but I wanted to go to Kate next. Carl pointed out that this is a very lengthy process, and we are talking about these timelines with a lot of uncertainty, or a Fourier transform, if we go back to the earlier speaker. But so how do the advancements in the maturity of the technology, and especially also in the algorithm field, how do those impact and implicate the migration timelines?
Yeah, I mean, I think as you noted at the top, Leopold, we're seeing over the past few days, the industry is maturing, I think, along a number of vectors. And just like where I sit at Google on the quantum computing team. Google, of course, also has extensive effort to upgrade our infrastructure to PQC, as well as both internally and on the cloud side. And that's something that I can speak to a little bit. I'm not, a deep expert in that space. We've also done some of these things. We've had experts involved in the NIST standardization process, but maybe just to kind of on this topic of the timeline sitting within the quantum computing group, of course, we saw in the last slide, current quantum processors have on the order of 100, a few hundred qubits. Obviously, that's still far away from the number you would need to run Shor's algorithm, but I want to say a few things about that. The first is that Google did last year show experimentally for the first time that you can do error correction, in a convincing way. And I think that there a lot of the progress in the past few years has been on just making these fundamental improvements to qubit quality, getting error correction to work, and the scale up in number of qubits is going to start happening faster. The other piece that I think is really important is that there's been a lot of progress on just the resource estimation, like bringing down the number of gates you need to run a quantum algorithm. And, that is part of what contributed to a paper that Google published in the spring on the topic of resources needed to run Shores. And it's not, when people first started looking at this, it was like billions of qubits would be needed to run Shores. And it's come down steadily over time. And our latest estimate is you would need 1 million noisy qubits. And 1 million noisy qubits is sort of what most quantum computing companies will tell you they'll have in something like 5 to 10 years. So, obviously, I think everybody here knows there's a lot of uncertainty in this. There's a certain amount of hype in the industry. Not clear exactly what that endpoint is, but the resource estimates are going down. The hardware is improving. I think we can expect the resource estimates to keep going down. And so where that intersection point is in terms of time is quite uncertain, but it could be. The NIST recommendation, I think, is to deprecate move to PQC algorithms by 2030 and disallow by 2035. And those estimates start to look pretty important when you think about the trajectory of the technology development.
Yeah, thank you. And maybe picking up on that last point that you raised there about the deprecation schedule, how does the U.S. compare against some of the other international governments? I know that this is a NIST advisory about the deprecation, but how does this implicate other countries? Any thoughts?
I think, so I will preface this by saying, I am less deep in some of these pieces than I am in some of the other kind of quantum computing development policy conversations. My understanding is that there are many other I think Canada recently put out a PQC strategy, the EU did. There's lots of activity in this space. I think there is maybe, and I don't know, maybe Carl and Charles, you have more to say about what is actually happening in practice. My understanding is that the actual sort of getting down to business and the work required to migrate these systems, for example, on the government side, maybe is a bit further along in the US than elsewhere. But
so I will say this, that there is, for our Five Eye partners and for countries that are already aligned, there are a lot of discussions going on and a lot of collaboration going on the type 1 systems or the higher assurance systems. And the communications have been many, and most of the governments around the world have been aligned by their state departments. There has been many policy efforts on the State Department side around quantum computing, as well as around post-quantum cryptography. The UK and Canada are fairly following, not to the letter of the law as CNSA 2.0, but similar internal strategies around what we call the web tier. And that's really what has been published, right? The CNSA 2.0 standard necessarily talks about the web tier, right? TLS, but there's other areas that this stuff needs to be replaced. And so for those things, I think that they are in alignment with. But for the larger things, and so for some of the ISR-based stuff, for some of the embedded stuff, from the OT-based stuff, there's some disparateness. But that we are communicating across the Five Eye partners and like nations. And so that's a good thing. Where we are behind is, in general, the process to do cryptographic transformation takes time. You have to build the algorithms. Well, that took 6 years, or that's from 2016 till last year. Then you have to put them into the protocols. Well, you got to go through the standards bodies, and that's taking time. And so at the end of the day, when you start to look at the systems that need to be migrated, they vary in complexity. You're not going to change cryptographic information on an aircraft carrier in 5 years. Everybody knows that, right? But the reality of it is that what we all need to do is double down. Now, I'm talking to an audience who develops innovation to solve these challenges. And so this becomes a clarion call for all of you in this room to develop the capabilities and technologies that we need to be able to accomplish this mission. IBM has developed some of this technology. We talked at lunch about how you could become cryptographically agile. Well, the first thing you need to do before we define it is to make sure you understand what your data is, your specific IT posture, and have a handle on it. And then you can start thinking about what your cryptographic posture is, which most organizations have never had to do, right? And then now you become a long way towards what we're going to define now as cryptographic agility. You need to get to that as an end state. It's a journey to get there, but you definitely have to really have a handle on what makes your organization tick. What is that data? How does it get to your bottom line? What data is the most important to you? What are your crown jewels, right? I contend that most IT organizations today are still on that journey. And so we need to align with that.
Thank you. And maybe if we stick with the implementation and the operationalization of it, Carl, maybe if we can go over to you. I don't know if you have any thoughts on what would be helpful from, or what you would like to see from governments, how governments can support this very lengthy and complicated process, and also how can governments migrate their own systems? Is it the same type of roadmap, or is there something unique about government systems?
Yeah, I think that the directives and direction that has been coming out from government and the methodical process in order to go through and devise methods of security, and then the adamancy of directing government entities in order to get through their discovery process, setting up the deprecation schedules, has sent great signals to industry and also encouraged the government entities, at least in the U.S. and themselves, to move forward. I do think that there is struggles even within the government, within certain agencies, collecting the information that's being asked and required of them, because they too don't necessarily have the infrastructure to do that data analysis and then the ability to action on it. And so there may be more appropriations made within the government in order for them to action on it. And then as they adopt the technology, that forces more people who work with the government and collaborators to then also use those new protocols. And so there can be a pull from the government rather than just policies and directive, but actual requirements in order to do connectivity and function with the government for data exchange. So those are some activities that they're falling behind on or they're lacking on, and ways that they can help accelerate by doing and by encouraging and showing and continuing to publish their results and methods for actions that they've taken.
Yeah, and I think I like the point, especially the one, I think, going back to the National Security Forum on Tuesday that we held here. One of the themes there was to say, have the government send demand signals, give us a problem that we can solve, and see what existing solution or what solutions exist in the commercial marketplace, so you can really drive up the commercialization. Kate, maybe going over to you, is that something, that notion of increasing capacity to kind of like keep building that awareness, is that something that the government can support? For example, is that something we should think about in the NQI Act reauthorization, in boosting and promoting the adoption of quantum computing?
Yeah, I mean, I know there has been some work on this for sure. More work to raise awareness is going to be important the closer we get to the work has to start now, right? And I totally agree. Also, procurement requirements can be a great tool for this kind of thing as well. The only thing I think that we haven't sort of touched on that I do just want to say to be, transparent is, and I think is a good thing that we are definitely seeing with the U.S. government's approach, is all of this should be done in a risk-based way, right? To like identify what is the most vulnerable information and migrate that first. And because it's also true that this 1 million noisy qubits to break one key, it would take about a week to do that, right? So it's not like we're talking about all of a sudden somebody builds that quantum computer and everything becomes vulnerable all at once. And so I think that's just an important part to consider too when thinking about the cadence of this, what to prioritize first, because the reality is, we can't probably get everything migrated by 2030. That's just, or even 2035, it seems, probably.
Yeah, I think that some of the other signals that the government has sent out that I think many of us in the community are familiar with is that, there was exfiltration of our data happening, encrypted data was being stolen, and no one really knew why, but just that we were getting signals from security groups that were saying that this was happening. And then we learned about Salt Typhoon and how they got into a lot of data centers and into telecommunication companies and closed the door behind them, and have that is a means of access to do this exact type of data stealing and harvest now, decrypt later attack that is widespread across some of our most important infrastructure here in the US. And now that realization hits home, rather than just kind of a note that it's happening, but now we know how and why it could be happening to any of us right now, it adds a bit more urgency and potency to the message too. And so being more transparent about where this is happening is something that the government could do a better job on.
Yeah, thank you. And we have about 3 minutes left, so I'd like to just pose the same question to all three of you in terms of PTC adoption and migration. What are the blind spots or the obstacles that you see?
So I said it. I think that before you can transform your environment, you got to have an understanding of your IT environment today. You got to understand the data and what it means to your business now, and those are opportunities. The other piece is you need to build a cryptographic posture across your organization, and now and you can work towards a crypto agile environment. And so that's the opportunity. And so that gives you an opportunity to rethink how security is done across your enterprise, and that's an opportunity I think that that most organizations should embrace. The other opportunity I think we have is, we can now build in systems that are more secure because of this inflection point in time. And so I'll pause there.
I like the framing of opportunities, but sorry.
Yeah, I mean, I think some of the blind spots are just not getting started soon enough, right? I saw Michele Mosca earlier. He came out with this theorem about if you don't start fast enough and a quantum device comes along, then you're just exposing your risk over multiple years, and it still stands true. And this isn't an easy process. This is going to be a long process. It's going to take multiple years to upgrade everything and get it in place, but the value and the determination to do it is very obvious now, and we understand it much better than we do in the past. And it doesn't make sense to turn a blind eye on the information that's readily available, the people who are willing to help you get it done, and as well as just the ecosystem that exists. I listened to some different security groups and some different podcasts talking about this, and they're like, the release of post-quantum cryptography is the most smooth and organized information deployment and upgrade with the calculated amounts of availability of algorithms and timeline that has really happened. This isn't a jolting change. It just takes action, and you will be blindsided if you don't get started. But there's plenty of opportunity for people to move forward.
I would say, as somebody who spends most of my time talking to quantum computing researchers on both the hardware and algorithm side, one thing that I have observed over the past few years is that quantum algorithms developers, they don't really understand the operational challenge of migrating to PQC. You ask them, I've had on a number of occasions, asked very preeminent scientists in this space, right, at Google, at our partners, because I'm sitting in this kind of outreach policy governance space, what do you see as the biggest risks from quantum computers in 10, 15 years from now? And they just very quickly dismiss this risk because, there's a solution to that, right? So that doesn't matter. And so I think it's also really important to educate that community. And that's something that we've really tried to do even within Google, to set up forums to bring together our algorithms team and our security team so that they understand each other, they understand new algorithms we might be developing, because it may not just be Shores, right? That could introduce vulnerabilities, so that they understand the challenges of actually making this migration happen, because you've got to have that communication so we really understand the threat landscape and timeline.
Yeah, we did the same thing at IBM. So we moved our cryptographic team that developed the algorithms into the quantum group. And that was a way that everyone can harmonize what we're talking about here. But you're right, it's a different skill set to build existing IT systems and do cybersecurity than it is the research community that builds quantum computing or quantum computers, or even the researchers that develop lattice-based cryptography, right? And so, but the point is that the generalized IT environment, who never really necessarily had to worry about cryptography before, has to now worry about cryptography.
And of course, we want to make all the algorithms run more efficiently on the quantum computer, but everything we're doing to run all these molecular simulations algorithms faster also can be applied. Yeah. So.
Thank you. We're unfortunately out of time, but really thank you for the lively discussion. Look forward to continuing the discussion afterwards. Thank you.